viewers, back to the Atheist Roundtable with your host, David Oliverio, the Preaching Humanist. That is I, and my regular buddies and co-hosts, Andrew and Manoj, and I have a special co-host today. This is Clare Wuellner. Welcome, Clare. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
And before I turn it loose for my co-host today, I do want to discuss what we did yesterday. Guys, we had a good time yesterday, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
We went to Lady Bird Lake and did our Ask an Atheist activism. Normally, we try to go into more rural, conservative Christian areas. We went to urban Austin. Boy, were we surprised. We had lots of Christians. Yeah, some angry Christians, some progressive Christians. We had good dialogue, and we had several fellow atheists who've never heard about the atheist community of Austin. And we told them about the community and how we're trying to build a community.
And they were happy to see us out there.
They were very happy. So, yeah. And we got to get some recruits, guys. We got to get some people out there with us and helping us and so forth. So, so yeah, let's, before we get into the topic today, while I turn y'all loose, I want to talk about Clare and a quick, very impressive bio. I'm very impressed.
Okay.
So you're a PhD. You've been on the Atheist Community of Austin board for five-ish
years. Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but like that, yeah.
Foundation Beyond Belief president
of the board. Yeah.
Of the board. Now, I'd never heard of the Foundation Beyond Belief until I forgot to turn my timer on. Until I heard you speak at one of the lecture series about 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
And when I heard you, I was like, I like her. There's something about her. She's kind of a fellow activist.
Right.
But I learned about Foundation Beyond Belief from you. And I heard you speak several other times at Oasis and other places. And I always noticed you were kind of like us, that kind of minority of atheists that are more activists. And I noticed you say things like, when a Christian approaches me, I noticed you said something like, well, look at the trees. You know how you get that all the time from believers.
Oh, yeah.
So I really appreciate that about you. And you're the current host of the Godless Bitches show.
Yes, the shirt. Yay. Can you see it, everybody? Godless Bitches.
There it is.
2.0.
Yes.
We had a show just yesterday morning, and it was a really fun show. If you haven't listened before, maybe give that one a listen, people.
Well, tell the viewers about your show.
Oh, yeah, Godless Bitches. It's a show. First, before I do any of that, I need to tell everybody that I am recovering from a concussion. I have what's called post-concussion syndrome. There are a lot of symptoms that go with that, and my brain fatigues fairly easily. And I forget things, and I lose words and stuff like that. So I'm not going to be at my most articulate. And I'm going to be speaking a lot from my notes because I can't trust myself to remember everything. Don't worry, I'm getting better. I'm much, much better. And I'm on the trajectory to recover fully.
Good.
But David, you invited me, and this is super important to me, and so I want to put the effort out here.
Good.
So Godless Bitches is a podcast produced by the Atheist Community of Austin. We talk about the intersection between feminism, really all activism, and atheism. It's Jen Peoples, Tracy Harris, and me so far, although we are looking to expand that. And it's just like three friends talking about stuff. And I love listening to Jen and Tracy because they've been at this so much longer than I have. And the way they put their thoughts together is always so enlightening. And I feel like the little fish for sure. So that's what Godless Bitches
Beautiful,
is.
beautiful. And again, like I told Eric and Jamie, who were on our show a few weeks ago, I love the diversity we have here at the Atheist Community of Austin. We have our different flavor of activism, which is all good. It's all good. So, all right. Let's see. Did I miss anything on your bio? Let's see. You're currently an artist.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
And PhD entomology?
Entomology. And entomology, biology, and behavioral ecology, really. It's all kind of interwoven, those things.
I love it.
And so since what we're going to talk about is really behavior. That's why I'm like, yes, we need to talk about this because it is so simple.
Yes,
it is very simple.
It is. And let me give 2 minutes
Do that.
quick on a little summary of the episode I talked about on Morality 101. Only because when we're out there, my buddies and I are out there on the weekends, it's unbelievable how many Christians, especially those on the right, maybe not so much progressive Christians, literally ask us this embarrassing, stupid question. Where do we get our morals? Yeah, Andrew, exactly. He's over there face-palming. And it's so unbelievable we have to explain to them. So I did this quick little 10-minute Morality 101 episode, but I forgot to do something. I talked more about nature, not nurture. And the older I get, turning 61 this year, the older I get, I feel like I used to be a 50-50 Freudian type guy, 50% nurture, 50 nature. I'm more and more and more nurture now the older I get. That's just me. Oh. Yeah, a little leaning more to...
Science says otherwise.
Okay, that's what you're here for. You're the scientist. Yeah. I'm open, yeah. So I think it's both, definitely. But I didn't get to discuss the nurture as much. So basically I discussed how we are a social species, primate species. Morality is doing what is right, regardless of what you're told. Group cohesion, group survival. Morality is the well-being of humanity and decreasing human suffering and so forth. Pretty basic, simple stuff. And that's the question we get from believers. So I want you guys to chime in, and let's discuss that. So let's talk about the nature part of it, and then we'll get into nurture.
I would like to, I remember something from my past and just bring that up here. Like most people, I used to be an atheist, and at the time, this was a thinking, really, yes, it has to be somebody external to me that guides me with my morals, otherwise, how do I get it? So, the question you mentioned, Christians come up to you and ask, where do you get your morality from? That was also present in me till I started thinking more about how the world around us behaves. And then the revelation that really did it for me was thinking about survival and natural selection and survival of the fittest. So you are inherently interested in your own survival. And then second, you're interested in the survival of your close ones, and then the group, and then so forth. So that makes us social beings, and it's good that our group in general survives and does well, because that also means we will also benefit from the well-being of the group. Yeah. And then I try to take morality questions, like random morality questions, and not one I could find that doesn't fit this guiding principle. Everything that we consider as good and moral against bad and immoral, it just comes down to the question of, is this good for the survival of the group? Is this good for the survival of the members? So I've challenged people that I know, hey, can you name me one principle of goodness, kindness, or morality that doesn't fit with this model of survival of the group and survival of the individual?
Yeah, that's pure science. Yeah, that's pure.
Yeah, I heard you say something, and I've heard it said on the Atheist Experience quite a bit when people ask about morality. Where do you get your morals? I think one of the pat answers is, well, maybe if I help this person, it might be the case that they'll help me. I'll need help later on, and so it's a round thing. But that's actually wrong-headed, because if we were not a social species, you wouldn't need that help. Because we are a social species, we have to have that help. We need that help. A human being, if you birthed a baby and put it out in a forest, it's not going to survive, because it is required that we have a lot of parental investment. And even if we didn't have that parental investment, let's say I drop you in a forest right now. You have language. because you're social. You've learned a lot of things from other people because you're social. You have knowledge of you have clothes on you. Did you make those clothes? No. Somebody else made those clothes. We are inherently social. So to say, I'm going to be nice to this person because it might come back to me, it's definitely coming back to you all the time. Somebody is willing somewhere in the world to make this T-shirt so that I can wear it. Somebody somewhere in the world is willing to farm so that I can eat, etc. It's not, there's really no choice in it.
Okay, you're talking about reciprocal altruism. Is that what you're
Well,
talking
altruism, if you look at it scientifically, there's in sociality, there is no such thing as pure altruism because there's always a payoff if you look at it.
So if I take one step back, maybe it's our sociable nature that has made our species so successful. Humans thrive and dominate. So maybe natural selection selected a social group for more success.
I don't know. It depends on how you define success. If you mean big numbers, yeah, I'd say we're pretty successful, but there are probably, well, I know there are more bacteria than humans. And then if you look at, say, bears, they're pretty successful and they're not the least bit social. Success, if you're, I mean, in terms of what we're doing to the planet, I'm saying we're being very not successful right now. But if you are, here's the other thing. When you look at, say, social insects like bees, if you measure it in terms of if something is successful, you'd think you'd see more of it. Honeybees. Everybody knows about honeybees. Most people think that's the only kind of bee there is. Maybe they know about bumblebees, maybe they know about sweat bees, but that's it. There are somewhere between 25,000 and 30,000 species of bees.
I was not aware of that.
In the world, yeah.
Wow.
And guess how many of them are honeybee species?
Very few?
11.
A very small
11.
percent. Wow.
Yeah. So, but if you look at the other species of bees, there's all levels of sociality in there. It goes all the way down to each female. She ecloses from her egg, she goes out and mates, and then she digs her own little burrow, provisions it, lays the egg, and does the whole thing all by herself, completely solitary. And then you have the honeybees up here with overlapping generations and the queen and the caste system and their amazing ability to communicate. Bees can communicate distance, resource, how plentiful it is, the effort it will take to get there, whether we're going to be moving soon. Their ability to communicate is just astounding. If you look at those 25 to 30,000 species, there's everything in between. And if you look at the genes, they map to that. So it's genetic.
Yeah.
It's just genetic. You're not going to take a solitary species of bee, stick it in a hive, and it's going to look around and say, this is pretty awesome. I'm going to kick back and eat some honey, maybe go get some flower nectar and, blah, blah. No. They are genetically incapable of it. Right. And you take a honeybee and put it out in the world by itself, it's going to die.
Yeah. Now, playing devil's advocate, which I like to do. Now, a believer, a Christian would always say, well, first of all, I'm made in the image of God. We are different than other animal species. We get our morality from the divine command theory, from the Bible and so forth, that we're made in the same image of our God and so forth. So we get that quite a bit, that we're not anything like other species, other social species.
So wrong-headed. Everything that we do, there's another animal that does it better. I'm going to give an example that will help illustrate how genetic behavior is. Wolves, when they hunt, they sniff around. That helps them. They associate that smell with a prey item. They track the prey. They see the prey. They stalk it. They catch it. They put their mouth on it. They bite down. They throttle it on the throat. They may rat it if they need to, if it's a small prey item. and then they take it back to their pack to share. The dogs that we have bred have isolated those discrete behaviors to our advantage. So, Labrador retrievers are known for their soft mouths, right? That you want that dog to go get your bird, but you don't want it to damage it. The dog can see the animal, will go to it and pick it up, but it will not bite down. That is how discrete these behaviors are. So that's not a human being, all right?
Yeah.
Every study that we do of human behavior, the vast majority of whatever people are doing is genetic. Yeah. There is plasticity, of course, in that, but not tremendous plasticity. I will never be a type B person. I've had to be a type B person recovering from this post-concussion syndrome thing. You literally are on cognitive rest for the first few weeks. You're supposed to sit and stare at a wall, and if you don't, you get a headache. So it's immediate, the feedback. So that was extraordinarily difficult for me. It was freaking torture. I'm never going to be that kind of person. And I know plenty of people. I have friends who are like, geez, that's vacation. I'd take it. I'm like, no, it's torture. Yeah. I'm not going to change that about me. So I'm losing track of my thoughts.
That's okay. You're doing good. You're explaining. Right. Yeah, you're explaining. I asked you a question about.
Okay, so humans being different.
Bigger brains, obviously.
Yeah, I think what makes us different is that we're able to talk about ourselves.
I mean, we need more resources to live. We enjoy more resources, longer lives than many animals. So being extra social certainly has been an advantage.
Because we're social. If we weren't social, it wouldn't be an advantage to behave socially.
Sure, then we would not probably cooperate in groups and
we wouldn't
build
be doing
big
this.
buildings. Yeah, we wouldn't be discovering more of the universe.
Each of us would know how to forage and build our own homes, and then we would get together just to mate, and otherwise we'd tear each other's throats out, and that's how it would run. And so it's,
Doesn't that go along the lines with fellow primates, the great apes? They're all social.
No,
except for they're that's okay.
You go.
No,
you go.
Orangutans.
Orangutans, right?
So there is a difference there too.
Right.
Obviously.
And in terms of how the different species are social, there are things in their societies that are reflected in ours. Everybody's super familiar with chimpanzees and Jane Goodall's work, and that's wonderful and everything. But there's also bonobos.
Bonobos?
Which people...
I like the bonobos.
Right, of course.
They
everybody does.
Conflict
super
by,
sex positive.
How do they resolve conflict?
Cute?
Sex.
Compared to the common chimps? Common chimps is... male-dominated, bonobos.
They
put on some Marvin Gaye, and they, they resolve conflict.
Right. Everything is resolved with sex, and hierarchy is determined with sex, and they're just screwing all the time.
Absolutely.
And of course, people are like, no, it's just sex, people. It's just like eating. You got to do it. Sex, eating, sleeping.
That distortion comes from religion and Christianity.
Wow, really?
Distorted human sexuality.
Right. So all these things are there, and we think we're so special because every time we think we have something special, we're the only ones who make tools. It gets knocked out as soon as we find something else. And one of the things that I'm delighted, and every pet owner has always known this, that we're finally starting to get the scientific thing behind it, is theory of mind. Animals know what Empathy. You're thinking. Horses know what you're thinking. They read human behavior. That's pretty freaking amazing.
Excuse me, is that along the lines of, I've had some cat owners, we have a cat, and owners will say a domesticated cat through artificial selection, not the wild cats.
Yeah, they're not terribly, it's got a different name from actually being domesticated, but it's like land breed, something like that. Because they're not truly domesticated.
I guess.
Go, like dogs.
No, I agree with you. Yeah, they still have that wild, we have a cat.
We animals do have mirror neurons, that is, consciously we may not pick up when I look at you, I may not pick up, okay, he's thinking about this. Consciously, I may not be doing that. But then subconsciously, there are things at play, and those parts of the brain may be picking out signals, oh, he's happy, or he's congenial, or he's threatening, those sort of things. And then those sort of underlying workings give rise to thought like, oh, let's be extra defensive, or let's reciprocate in friendship. So
I want you to continue in a moment. I do want to ask Andrew, because you've been so quiet, my buddy. Do you have anything to chime in before we move on?
No, I've got plenty to get to, but so I was just going to joke that hey, how could those horses and those bonobos and the other and apes, how could they behave like that without God? Come on, they need God to behave that way.
Right.
Come on,
they really don't.
They must be hiding their Bibles somewhere, and we just don't see them.
The horse Bible, the horse God. The riddle of obligation is what I asked believers. I did that yesterday with that one woman. You may not have heard me. Would your morality collapse if God, being the grounds for this morality, were absent? In other words, if you let go of God belief, what would happen to your morals? Sad to say.
And we asked the gentleman on the bicycle, the Christian gentleman, about a morality of, if you're a good moral person, but not a Christian, and you die, where do you go? By scriptures, that person should go to hell. And would it be right of a moral God to put you in hell just because you didn't subscribe to his scriptures?
Yes.
It's crazy.
Absolutely. It's hard for some of them to answer that. It really is.
And that kind of ties into something I was going to discuss about, the whole concept of faith, not works, that Christians in particular preach. It doesn't matter how good you are, you're still going to hell unless you have faith. Well, that's the opposite of morality, right? And if anything, religion, particularly the Christian religion, the Abrahamic faiths, I don't know about the others, I mean, if anything, they're an impediment to morality. If anything, they're like a license to sin, because, hey, well, all you have to do is ask God for forgiveness afterwards, so sin all you want, and then on your deathbed, just ask forgiveness. Well, when you reject these God myths, and you don't have that crutch of being able to get this cosmic forgiveness, you're actually more inclined to behave in a moral way. I would think, and I know from my own experience that I've been more of a moral person since I rejected faith than when I believe.
Go ahead, Manoj.
It comes with the realization that being moral is, well, first of all, it's a very convenient way, it's a safe option to go about life. It tremendously improves your state of well-being. With that realization, it just becomes so evident that being a moral good person is actually very beneficial to yourself. And for the to answer questions of self-interest, there it is. It's being a moral person really helps you with your well-being.
Yeah, if you're not moral, then we lock you up. Because you're not good for society.
Right.
So, like with bees...
Or we elect you president, one or the other.
Well, yeah, right. One of those extremes. What's wrong with this picture? So with honeybees, they have their colony, and every colony is faithful to its own. And if a bee from another colony should accidentally approach that colony, there are sentry bees that will kill it because they have the concept of the other, if you want to name it like we do. But here's the interesting thing. If that bee that's coming in has a load of pollen or nectar, the sentry will mark the bee with the hive smell and welcome them in. So if you are contributing to society, then you are welcome. If you are apparently going to go in and just take, which a bee with nothing would seem to be doing, no, you're not welcome.
Just like humans. That's
Yes, it's social behavior.
I love it.
It's not morals. This is what my giant point is, and if everybody takes nothing else away, that is it.
Beautiful.
It is just genetics. And this is what, when they talk about how nothing makes sense except in the light of evolution, and how evolution is parsimonious, this is what I'm talking about. This is what scientists are talking about. Boy, this is so complex, this morality stuff. No, it's not. It's evolution. It's just that freaking simple.
I wonder, the people to experiment with game theories.
Yes. Yes.
This should be a good place to just propagate ideas about morality. Where does it come from? How can you
there are
generate
games.
those
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly, they do. It's been done. There's the hawk and the dove, and the hawk being someone who is, their go-to strategy is to be aggressive and take and be not so social. And then there's the dove, who tends to be extraordinarily social and submissive and compliant. And you have to have a certain number of hawks and a certain number of doves. Having all doves is never going to work because somebody's going to go, hey, I'm going to be a dove and fuck y'all. And then they become dominant, right? Yeah. But you can't have too many hawks because then there's too much fighting and and within themselves, and then it collapses that way. So there's a balance, and that's what you see in society. Yeah.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I wonder how many, like if you were to give a talk about this, about evolution, natural selection, morality, in the human species and other groups, social species, if you were to give that talk to a group of Christians in a church, I wonder how many people, especially progressive Christians, how many people would agree with you?
Progressive Christians would be fine with it, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Now, if you were, say if you did this, say if we got you a meeting, a gig at a Fundamentalist Baptist church, which that would never happen, but if you gave another point of view, different worldview, and explained science, which we all know that's the greatest arbiter of truth, the scientific method. We look to that, informed by science. And I learned from you guys, you scientists, by the way. I appreciate it. I'm a science geek. I just read it.
I know. I've watched your show, and you always look for that science, and I love it.
I love that stuff. So, but if you were to talk to a group of fundamentalist Baptists, I just wonder what the reaction would be. But based on the reaction
tell you
we
what
get,
it is.
and same thing we get, the reaction we get. They have no regard, no respect for the enlightened human mind and science.
Well, I would go further than that because they haven't been exposed to it. I honestly think my in-laws love them. They are my parents. My in-laws are my parents. I call them mom and dad, and they are my mom and dad. Southern Baptist on a mitochondrial level. Wow. Everything comes back to Jesus. Yeah. Absolutely everything. When my daughter was born and they came to see her, my mother-in-law looked at her. I love you, Mom. I'm not being ugly, if anybody. And she said, I don't know how anyone can think that we are the same as the apes. And I'm like, I don't know how you can look at that and not think it. But that's just your...
Go to a zoo.
Yeah, they can't and won't see it. They think there's something special about being human. And...
so what's the trick to cracking that resistance?
I'll tell you what it is. For me, it's not being an asshole. One of the things about the whole atheist community of Austin, videography and podcast that goes out, a lot of it is, at least it has been somewhat aggressive, and like, you're not gonna, there is a large number, there's a, what's the word I'm looking for? Help.
Okay, are you talking about more education?
There's a long continuum of what people will respond to, and I can tell you over here for the longest time, why aren't there any women in atheism, in the community? Fucking duh. The only reason I came into this community and started cracking it open for women was because I was from academia and I could handle y'all. If you want to argue with me, I'll argue back. I'm not afraid of it. I don't, But most women are like, "Oh, you're going to argue? I'm really here to just socialize. Thanks. I'm going to find. I'm going to go back to church where I can do that."
Right.
So,
are you saying that in general women tend to be more conflict averse than men? And
I think they're. I don't.
That's my observation.
I think I don't know. Making generalizations is always a risky thing.
Of course,
somebody's going to be like,
right.
But I would say in general that socializing for women has a different flavor than it is for men. And you can look at it even in children. You know, men, they get mad at each other, they punch each other, and they're like buddies in 2 minutes.
You know, right.
And then,
You know, it reminds me, I don't know if you guys have ever watched the College Humor YouTube channel, but there was one that was very funny, and it was kind of similar to what we're talking about, where it was basically there were the, you know how guys, particularly like when you're young, and you bond by just ribbing each other and just talking crap to each other. And there were these three guys, and they're just saying the most awful stuff to each other. And this girl comes up to them and is like, "What? Oh my God, stop it! What are you guys doing?" And they're just like, "Oh, this is just the way we talk." And it was really funny because eventually, you know, and then there is. And then it's one of them's, it's his birthday. And so, okay, now we got to give you a punch in the gut for each year of your birthday. And she's like, "Oh my God, stop it." And he's like, "Should I call the police? Should I call them?" And she doesn't realize they're just bonding. They're just that's just how guys bond.
Right.
You know? And so, yeah, there is definitely that noticeable difference. And so, yeah, I can I definitely have kind of come to a similar conclusion, but not in the same way, but to the same kind of conclusion is that, when we're talking to theists or when we're talking to anyone we disagree with, keep in mind who they are and what they would be receptive to. And, you know, if you come at it in a super aggressive way, don't be surprised when they just double down and
think you're... So I feel like the atheist community, at least since I've joined it, I don't know how long ago, has become more female-friendly. I think that we are turning a corner there, and I see it reflected in the shows and stuff that we're doing here. And so that gets back to the Southern Baptist thing and how you do it is, first of all, you have to be out. When that our family was not out for a while because of a beloved grandmother, and that's fine. The relationship trumps the truth. That's just all there is.
She was
strongly religious, and
Baptist.
Oh yeah, Southern Baptist as well. Yeah. So once she was dead, we felt like we could when the opportunity presented itself, and the opportunity presented itself, and there was gnashing of teeth and much upset, and they weren't angry so much as disappointed, and the hard part was watching them just crucify themselves trying to figure out where they went wrong with their son. And they tried to blame me, and my husband's like, "No."
How old is your son?
I meant to say my husband.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My son, yeah. They tried to blame me, and my husband said, "No, it's not her fault. I'm a big person. I can." And he tried to blame college. He's like, "No, it was not that." So we're out. And then you open the dialogue. You have to do it. They're not going to want to. They're afraid of it.
And this is one way of doing it.
I can see the fear when my mother-in-law and I first started conversing. And so one of the things I did is when we first came out, I said, "You can be as mad as you want to be at me. But please do not abandon your grandchildren." And she said, "Of course not. That wasn't even an option." But I told her some of the basics that I know they are fed. We are not devil worshippers. We don't believe in any God.
I don't know where they get that.
Right. That's what they're taught. It's what they're taught. And it's not that I am mad at God and all those things. Just break it down, all the basics. And then as time has gone by, when she asks if I want to go to the store with her, it's time for our talk. And we talk in the car and talk about what's going on. And
Good for
she
you.
asks questions.
Oh, that's great.
And she's very timid about it because I suspect it's foreign and fearful for her. And for her, you asked before, how can they really even understand it? They really can't. It is a different part of a different way of thinking. For instance, my husband pointed out to my mother at one point, mother-in-law, that if she had been born in Afghanistan and was raised Muslim and stuff, she'd be just as convinced. And you could see, it wasn't that she was like, "No, that would never happen." It was like, it couldn't. even, no.
They couldn't add it together.
No, it would not come in there
Yeah.
at all.
I think about my early teen years, and I used to be atheist, and the biggest barrier was, I'm learning so much in school about science and these things, how the world works, and then there's a gap between theory of everything due to God and then how the world's working. And the big barrier there was, if I have to just follow the evidence, I have to give up the faith in God, and that's really scary. I don't want to be on a side just because I'm not able to see everything that God is about. I don't want to be on the wrong side.
Yeah.
And I imagine, I don't know for sure, that's the way people that are strongly religious feel, many of them, when they come up against questions that don't fit in with their theory of the world.
Absolutely.
It's terrifying. It's terrifying.
Yeah, we're going to probably have to move to the next topic.
We have more than one topic? I'm sorry.
We're not same topic, but part two. Let's just go 5 more minutes because I want to keep this thing a little bit short. So, because this is a topic we could go on for days and hours.
Oh, boy.
It's so awesome. So we talked about nature. Let's just talk about a little bit of nurture in part of morality and where people... why do people act the way they do? Why do they do what they do? Because of what they believe? Is it from your upbringing somewhat? For example, I've got clients as a personal trainer that are very secular atheists, and some of the most moral, most beautiful, ethical family units I've ever seen in my years of being a personal trainer, getting to know families in their homes, because I go to my in-home person, my clients are secular people. And I remember this couple who was former Christians. They're in their 40s. They have 3 college-age boys. And, I mean, most Christians would give their right arm to have a family unit that loving. Now, it's not true for every family that's an atheist, but these people were so ethical and moral, and they never taught about God or the Bible, and they just loved their kids, right? And they taught moral education, moral philosophy, science, social species. And I told them, I said, man, you guys need to go out and tell believers, look at my kids. I mean, their kids would walk in while I was training their 48-year-old dad, walked in from college, run up and literally kiss their dad and hug. I mean, there was so much love and respect in that family and other atheists I've met. And that's what I tell Christians all the time. There are many of us that are just as moral as you. It's a social, it's a human thing, and so forth. So,
if they're not Christian, David, you mistook. It's incest.
Yeah, I think I've heard.
I just blew y'all's ears out.
That's okay. I've heard that one before, believe it or not. I've heard everything.
Oh, really? That's just...
It's
oh, my God.
Incest, you mean like Lot with his daughters?
Hey,
yeah.
there you go.
Right. Is it I'm so
Lot.
confused at this point.
Yeah, that's the good Christian Bible morality. You have Lot's daughters pulling a Bill Cosby on him, and and
Lord Almighty God.
See, we've never even gotten into the immorality of this book, but if you stay tuned to my episode coming up about progressive Christianity, I go into different things about 2 Timothy 2, about women and what the Bible really says about it, and how progressive Christians hold on to this book. I mean, come on. Morals from this, come on. I mean,
David, that gives me an excuse to segue into one important point I wanted to make in this episode, is that it's so common, this idea that you need to have some sort of religious or spiritual faith in order to be moral. We even have a lot of secular people. It's so entrenched in our culture that even a lot of secular people who might be agnostic or even atheists themselves still buy into this idea that, well, everyone else, I want them to be religious and spiritual, so they'll be moral. We have this idea, and it's exactly the opposite of reality. And I think when we've confronted I've seen a lot of atheists respond to that argument, and almost like we're on the defensive, like, oh, well, you don't need a God to be moral. You can still be moral without a God. I would suggest this is an opportunity for going the offensive. We're actually, we have a higher claim to morality than a religious person does, because we're being moral without the threat of eternal hellfire. That's a more authentic morality if you're doing it without that fear.
Your message
also,
I hear is, don't outsource your morality.
Right, exactly.
Right on.
And of course, also, like you said, you can point out, as I've done to many progressive Christians, when I've asked them, hey, do you believe X, Y, and Z? And then I point out, well, then your own morality is already superior to the Bible morality.
Well, that's where they use secular rational morality.
Right. And think about it. We talk about cafeteria Christians, right?
Yeah.
Almost every Christian is a cafeteria Christian. What does that basically mean? It means you start with a morality, and then you pick and choose which parts of the Bible fit your own morality. You know, and then you turn around and think, you got your morality from the Bible? No, you picked and chose what parts of the Bible already fit the morality you already have. We just as we create gods in our own image, we assign our own morality to those gods we create, and then we turn around and think it's that God that gave us that? No.
Unbelievable. So nurturing, I think it's important. I don't know if we'll ever know. I think Freud was a 50-50
Yeah, but he's
nature.
dead wrong.
Okay.
Dead wrong.
So you're saying more science and more nature.
The nature part of it is, I mean, the findings are like 75 to 95% depending on the thing.
Okay.
I mean, some of them are 100%. I will never be able to fly. And it's not that I lack just the physical ability. When I was a baby, I didn't stand on the edges of things and practice. It's just not in there.
Okay.
You need to listen to R. Kelly. You know, he believes you can fly.
Right. Super. Yeah.
Sounds like a conspiracy theory.
Sounds like Darwin. Well, I wish Darwin was right, but on that one. But it's not very adaptive to try to fly if you can't. So, but I think when it comes to nurture, a lot of it's culture.
Yeah,
absolutely. And cultural norms and moral norms, and
so culture and nurture.
Yeah.
So what goes when culture and nurture are aligned with our inherent nature? That's when it goes well.
Yes.
Right.
That's good. Good balance.
When the culture or nurture conflicts our inherent nature, it doesn't carry on.
Great point. That's a recipe for disaster.
And that's where we're, politically, where we're headed. The problems. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was when they talk about morality, they always bring up lying, killing, raping, stealing. Okay. Everybody can agree on those.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Then why are you and then it's always secondary. Oh, wait, and what you do in the bedroom matters.
Yeah.
And the reason they only bring up those big four is because at some level they know that these other things like abortion and homosexuality and transgender and all this stuff really has no impact on society.
Societal health and so forth.
Societal health. Yes. Yeah. I mean, you may personally find it offensive.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But it's not going to affect the society. So when they talk about abortion and any non-normative sexual anything, it's always kind of turned around the other way. Oh, homosexuality, that's immoral. Okay, now you're thinking about it. But you're not, it's not in the same category as when they ask, how are you moral?
Right, and then 10 Commandments, like you've mentioned before, the first many are not even about morality. It's about control, really. It's somehow this way of control has worked for generations, and that's why it carries on.
Sure.
Put fear into a subject, and then you can control that subject with strings to that, pull or push that fear.
Absolutely. Well, folks, I think we're going to have to call it quits. I wish we could go on. We may just have to continue to do a part 2 on this. Because I think Claire's got a lot more she wants to say. Claire, will you come back on sometime?
I would love to.
So we can do a part 2. We really should, because this is such a deep topic. And it's very informative to people that believe in the supernatural. It's really hard, incomprehensible for some of them until we explain it to them. If they would just listen. I just tell Christians, have you been to a library? That's how I learned. Go get a basic book of sociology. I'm reading the textbook Sociology that I got right here from the library. 101, the basic sociology. And it's just, if they would just read that, they would start understanding this stuff.
And then just seeing everyday people, atheists, just having fun and being regular.
Being open-minded,
and just being exposed, just being out out there helps.
Having a healthy family, healthy family like I do.
Well, thank you, folks,
Thank
for
you,
a wonderful
David. This
show.
was so much fun.
Wasn't that great? You did great, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I did have some burp in there a couple times.
I
but
didn't notice it.
It brought you down to my level. So
I went offline a few times.
See, this is why I surround myself around intelligent people. When y'all are not looking, I tell this to my smart clients as a trainer. I'm always stealing IQ from everybody. I want to add more IQ here. So,
right.
Oh, hey, one more thing we don't forget, Patreon.
Oh, go ahead, Andrew.
It's patreon.com/thepreachinghumanist. And David, you want to, or Manoj? Basically, it's, if I understand correctly, it's for those who want to help support the show.
Yes.
There's initial, I forgot what it's called.
The levels?
The levels, like the initial intro level, you can be a patron, the first 24 for only $1 a month. And it helps support what we do, and so we can get out there on Town Lake, and we can get out there in Georgetown and other places, maybe Round Rock, and do what we do, and it helps fund our activities and supplies we need. And so anybody who can help out, who likes what we're doing and wants to support it, just go to patreon.com/thepreachinghumanist.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, guys and girls. We had a great time. And thanks for watching the Atheist Roundtable. And we'll see you next time. Have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.